This podcast may contain explicit language. You're gonna need a bigger boat. Jaws is next. Welcome to the Greatest Movie of All Time podcast, the show that uses a unique grading style to redefine what the greatest movies are. I'm Tom Duncan.
And I'm Dana Duncan.
And tonight, we bring you our third version of Jaws. We first visited this back in 2020 in our first season. At the time, we gave it a final score of 52. Which was at the time, or I guess what would now be in the 30-31 range. We then revisited it, and for a while it was the number one film on our list. It is currently number 3 with a 56.15. But, of course, in order to give us a full rounded view of everything, we've included 2 guests tonight that are here to celebrate the 50th anniversary of this great classic. First up, we have our returning celebrity guest and Instagram film reviewer making her second appearance on the show to date. Please welcome back Klarissa Bankston. How's it going?
Thank you it's so great. I'm so happy to be here. I love you guys and this show. It's so awesome. So thank you so much for having me back.
Yes, you were on our post-Oscars reaction show. How have you been since then?
Great. Super great. Busy. Just watching a ton of movies, which is the best way to spend time. So fantastic.
Excellent, excellent. And we also bring in our other returning celebrity guest, a Hollywood film producer making his second appearance on the show. Please welcome back Ralph Esparza.
I love that applause. Can you do it again? I don't hear that too often. Thank you. I love
it's like walkout music.
It's good to be here. It's good to see you guys again, definitely.
So you were last on with us for Magnolia. How have you been since last fall?
Great. Busy, like Klarissa. I'm working on several projects right now. Optioned a new horror novel that we're trying to get turned into a script. So a lot of cool things happening right now.
Excellent. So, Jaws. I know that you specifically requested to be here. Back on the Magnolia episode, you said you have a very special relationship with this movie. Can you remind us again why this is your favorite movie of all time?
Definitely. And I hate to bore Dana and Klarissa with the story again. We were talking before the podcast. But for me as a kid, Jaws was probably not the first movie I ever saw, but probably the first movie I ever saw by myself in the theater. I would go to the neighborhood theater and literally spend the whole day there. I'd get popcorn. Actually, what I did was I would sneak my little tape recorder in there. I would buy some batteries, and I would take my tape recorder in there, and I would record the movie. So I guess I was probably one of the first bootleggers out there. Don't tell anybody. So I would take like 3 or 4 blank cassettes, and I would pop it in and hit record and record the audio of the movie, and flip the tape over, change batteries if I had to, and I would sit there and watch Jaws probably 3 times in one day. But at night, I would get to go home and listen to the audio. Man, I was so obsessed with the movie. Don't ask me why. It just was magic when I first saw it, and it pulled me in, and I just fell in love with it. It made me want to make movies one day. I think that was the one that did it. And I was 12 years old when I first saw it.
And that's the kind of movie magic that every kid we have listening probably relates to.
Definitely. When it first was released in 1975, I remember being a little ticked off because I couldn't go see it. I was too young. And my sisters came home. They just went to see it. They were talking about it. And I was so darn jealous, and I just couldn't wait to be old enough to go see it. And yeah, it definitely affected me in a positive way. and definitely helped me get into the business. It just gave me that I got to do this someday kind of feeling. So I'm so grateful to Jaws, to be honest with you.
So, Dad, you were the only other participant tonight that was alive during 1975 and the craze that was Jaws. I know
Yes.
that you've now told this story a couple of times, but remind the great listeners that we have what your relationship is to this book, the movie, etc.
Okay, so the movie was set to come out in the summer of 75. I would have been 11. Okay. We had a girl who was a freshman in high school who kind of came and made sure my sister and I didn't kill each other, which was probably a good thing because probably I would have. But she was reading the book from Peter Benchley. So I convinced her that she should read the book to me. So every day we would go outside and we would sit out in the lawn in the morning before it got hot, and she would read a chapter of the book to me. And so I was listening to this, and then we finished it. And about the time, or about a week later, the movie came out, and she came back from the movie and told me all about what was in the movie because she apparently went with her dad, I think, to see the actual film. And so she came back and told me. And at that point in time, I was like, oh, I've got to see this. I want to see this film. And it was a while before I was able to because it just wasn't readily available to an 11-year-old, especially in Wisconsin. So I think it was a few years before I saw it on, I want to say it would have been late 80s, 78, 79 when it was on HBO. And we had first convinced my dad that I would give up a quarter of my allowance if he would use it to help pay for HBO because I wanted HBO so bad. And then of course my dad ended up watching it all the time and then he stopped taking it out of my allowance. So I remember watching it for the first time and just was utterly, even though I knew what was going to happen, I was still just like on the edge of my seat. And, the craze that was going around in 1975 was just amazing. KTEL, if you were old enough to remember, would do these music things, and they would do these cuts where it was like they did one called Mr. Jaws. Then they'd take popular songs from that year. A couple of them were like the Eagles. I can't remember all of them were. And they would make this thing where they would play a clip from the song, like, Mr. Jaws, what are you going to be doing? And they'd go, and they'd play a clip from the song. So that was huge. And the fact was, people were getting scared going out into ponds in Wisconsin. I'm like, really? There's no sharks in Wisconsin. They have to be in the ocean. Like somehow or another, somehow a shark's going to show up. And then, of course, you started hearing all these urban legends about crocodiles being released in the in the toilets, and so they're flushing up in rivers and all this, and it's going to be just like Jaws. And I mean, it was bad. And then of course Saturday Night Live did their whole bit with Land Shark, which is just a ripoff of Jaws, which I thought was hilarious when I saw it. So it was just a very interesting time. This became a cultural phenomenon that I had never seen before. And I think has become more prevalent now, the same type of thing. So when you talk about this being a blockbuster, it wasn't just a blockbuster. It set a cultural tone within society that impacted everyone. And I don't know if that had ever been done to this extent before.
So this, I believe, is my fifth time seeing it at this point, but my relationship with this movie is really only the lifetime of the show. The first time I saw it was when we covered it in 2020. As most people who have listened to the show long enough know, I'm not a big horror fan, so this one kind of always stood out as like, you have to eventually see it, but there was this trepidation that I always had with trying to watch it. Now, obviously, I've gotten over a lot of that with at least this particular movie. And we've covered it now. This is going to be the third time. You and I were on a guest appearance on Movies and Us, sister podcast, a couple of weeks ago when the actual 50th anniversary of this movie was out. But I would agree with you. The historical record is pretty clear on this one. And for anyone who's interested, who listens to the show quite a bit, the office poll this week, we have probably 20 to 25 staff members that participate in this weekly poll of, have you seen this movie? Do you know what it's about? Can you name anybody in the movie type of thing? And when it was asked, how many of you have seen Jaws? I think it is the first time that we've had almost universal hands go up. Toy Story was the only other one I can think of where I think everybody's hand went up. I've seen that movie. We had one hand that was down for had not seen Jaws.
And I feel sorry for her because everybody was razzing her.
Including me. There's always one in every bunch, but oh well. Now, Klarissa, what is your relationship to this great classic?
Yeah, I did not grow up watching this movie. My mom didn't really want us watching horror very often. And so the first horror movie I saw was when my sisters, they were teenagers when I was younger. They were watching Disturbia with their friends. And I snuck in behind the couch and so scared and walked away. But we just didn't watch anything, and that was when they were teenagers, so I wasn't really allowed to watch any kind of thriller, horror, anything. And when I did eventually watch more of like a thriller horror genre, it was not Jaws. I didn't see some of these like kind of classic thrillers until I was older. And so I decided to watch it for the first time. I think I was 18, and I watched it just in my apartment after I had moved out. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I genuinely don't think I can count how many times I've seen it now. It's very much a summer classic. I watch it with my friends. We have a projector, so we've watched it at the lake, like lake days when we're camping at the lake, things like that. We'll watch Jaws. But this is one, I teach a film studies class at the treatment facility I work at, and I show the girls this movie every time. It's just so classic. So I think my relationship is I just watched it on a whim when I was older and have loved it since. And I did see it in theaters again. I worked at a summer camp on an island off the coast of Seattle, and the whole camp staff, we all went and saw it in the one screen theater, and they played the let's all go to the lobby and things like that. So I had a kind of nostalgic experience of being able to watch it on a one screen theater on an island. So that was fun. Like I've experienced this movie in different facets, which has been nice and very fortunate for me because I am younger. Like this, I didn't have experiences with this movie, when it was newer. I mean, I'm 1999 baby, so like barely not in the 2000s.
Wow.
So
I have shoes older than you.
Sure. I am sure. That's okay. But yeah, so my experience was very different, but it's been great. I love it. It's a great movie.
Ralph, what was your first horror film?
So this is really bad. My sister and her boyfriend at the time, I snuck into the drive-in. I was in the trunk, right? That's what we did in those days. They were going on a date, and they snuck me in, and it was The Exorcist. And it was
wow.
Yeah,
okay.
It was but it was a re-release because it came out in 72 or 3, I think. I wasn't older, but they released it again, and that affected me a lot. Being a young kid like that, seeing that, I was like, wow, what's going on here? So that affected me, not in a good way like Jaws. I had nightmares on that one.
That's scary.
I'll tell you mine, which is I must have been about 7, and my parents were in a card club, and so they went out, and so I had the babysitter come, and I remember her name, Barb Kamlacker, and she got there, and she said, I've got ice cream if you'll let me watch this movie, and don't tell your parents that we watched it. And I said, ice cream and not tell my parents. Okay, I'll buy in. And I said, what are we watching? She says, it's kind of like The Christmas Story. And we watched Rosemary's Baby. And I was never so terrified in my entire life. I'm just going, oh my God, I'm going to die.
My word. That's a heavy first
Yes.
horror movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can't remember whole pieces of it. I just remember just like shaking in my chair watching this, going, I need to leave, but I'm too scared.
Oh my gosh.
So tonight for our 269th episode, we return to the waters around Amity with our third episode on Jaws. Directed by Steven Spielberg, written by Peter Benchley and Carl Gottlieb, cinematography by Bill Butler, music by the great John Williams, the G-Mote Hall of Famer John Williams, Roy Scheider as Martin Brody, Richard Dreyfuss as Matthew Hooper, Robert Shaw as Captain Quint, Lorraine Gray as Ellen Brody, and Murray Hamilton as Mayor Larry Vaughn, and Bruce as the shark. So, Dad, do you like this movie?
Of course I like this movie. I love this movie. It's one of the few movies that I rewatch periodically on a regular basis. I don't rewatch a whole lot, but this is one of those that's not a comedy or like a Hitchcock film that I rewatch on a regular basis. So of course I love the movie.
So let me pose this question to you. It's a little bit based on our office poll from earlier this week. Given that there was near universal, I've seen this movie, I am proud to say, raise my hand, that I've seen this movie. It seems to me this has somehow eluded the edge of time in a way that other films of even the 70s and some of the 80s have not done so. When you talk about like Raiders of the Lost Ark, I think certain groups of younger people just, no, that's not for me, because there have been some more modern ones that have been made and like that's too old. Or even Star Wars for some of the newer generations, because there have been ones made after it. No, that's not for me. The Godfather has gone by the wayside. It's too old. But for whatever reason, why do you think that Jaws still appeals to kids?
One, it's in color, which helps. There's a strong aversion to black and white among modern or the younger generation. Okay. Number two, the fact that it was a beach film, the styles are not out there. People aren't wearing clothes that are completely outdated. There's no leisure suits, okay, which were popular at that time. Number three, Spielberg was shooting this film so far advanced of what other directors were doing. This film was probably 15 to 20 years ahead of what other films were as far as techniques and cinematography and how it was being done. So it's fresh. And you combine those three things, and it does not seem that old. I swear, if you were to take just somebody who just landed on the boat from Warsaw, who's never seen a film, an American film, and showed him this and did not tell him that it was a 50-year-old film, they would be hard-pressed to understand that it was a 50-year-old film. And I think that's one of the appealing aspects of this. It was just so far ahead of where everything else was at that time. I mean, think about other films that were around that time. Think about how culturally obscure Taxi Driver is, which was not that far removed from this as far as release date. I mean, Taxi Driver, the city of New York and how it looked and the wardrobe and all of that, it just seems so dated. Okay, not Jaws. It was clean, it's fresh, it does not look much different than what it is now. And some of the themes and concepts are universal. There's nothing stale or non-traditional, non-modern than what it is now.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you.
I think the other additive I would just throw in there is I think it's helped a little bit by being a horror movie, but isn't necessarily one. It's like a transitional horror film. It's not one that's so like The Exorcist that I think it would be a non-starter for anybody getting into horror. This is like the one you're introduced to as a kid and can transition you into heavier horror as you go along. So I think this is a way of parents maybe introducing their kids, and thus why a lot of them have also seen it. But I think there's still a fervor for horror. The box office would indicate as much recently that there's still plenty of an audience for horror today.
Definitely. I'd like to just chime in really quick. For me, I think the not using CGI and still doing what he did is amazing. To have that mechanical shark, yeah, we all knew it's mechanical going in to see the movie. We know it's a mechanical shark, right? Because we've already read and heard about it. But it's still mind blowing to see that shark, even jump out of the water towards the end, and to know that there was no, CGI involved is just mind blowing to me. And yeah, it's that can happen. Hey, it can be a real story today. A shark can terrorize a town, which is why I think a lot of people still relate to it. It can happen today. You have all these Marvel movies and all this stuff, sure, but this can happen. And it has happened in the past. So
I wanted to add to what you were saying about the practical effects in this movie. I think that, number one, kind of, this is a new Hollywood movie, not Golden Age movie. Like, there are different eras of film, and like kids, I mean, I'm going to say it. It is so hard as a 26-year-old to get my friends to watch the movies that I love because they just don't watch them. And it's hard for them to get into that kind of Golden Age era. But this is new Hollywood, and I do think they were figuring out a lot of ways to tiptoe that line, especially after like post code, like out with the Hays Code, what can we do now? And this movie pushes those limits. I think a big thing with this is, and this is speaking as one of those people who's younger, that had experiences with Jaws in a different way before I knew it. I knew the movie before I'd even seen the movie. And why? Why did I know about it? I knew about it because it is constantly referenced in pop culture. It just is. Like, even as a kid, I would be playing in the pool with my friends and someone's but with a little fin above their head, and there's a shark. But it's because it's referenced in so many movies. I mean, I can think of so many movies off the top of my head where there's like a small chihuahua that fell in the pool and it's paddling and it's playing the Jaws music, and things like that come up. And I think it also is a formula horror movie where it established so much for the genre of, we have somebody who sees the evidence and we as an audience see the evidence, but nobody believes them. And then we have somebody who comes in and also sees the evidence, but still no one else believes them, right? And this isn't the first movie to have done that, but I think it was one of those first movies to strike horror in a generation and continue that formula that so many other movies were able to piggyback off of because of its success. That I think it just stapled that.
So what is this movie about?
man facing his fears. That's what it is for me. Well, in particular, Brody, the Brody character. Being that he's afraid of water. Yet he's on an island, afraid to go out in a boat. He does it, and here he is face to face with an eating machine, right? That he ends up killing. I mean, for me, for him to get through all this and keep his sanity and do Jaws 2, it's an accomplishment. So I think it's not, for me. It's not just a horror film. I don't even say horror. I wouldn't even classify Jaws as a straight out horror film. I think it's horror / adventure for me.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, to me, horror is like we were talking earlier. It's like all those slasher movies or Terrifier, all that stuff that's out now. That's like a true horror movie. Exorcist. This is more adventure for me, and I think John Williams' score kind of enhances that whole adventure feel to it. Yeah, but for me, I just think that no matter who we are or what we are, we're still, we're not superhuman. We're still open to things like this happening, or something like this could happen to us. I don't know if I'm making sense, but it's just that, the whole shark thing, invading a small town and attacking people. It's not, like I said earlier, it's not like it can't happen tomorrow. It's just so real. And I think that's why it's lasted so long. And I think seeing, the way Spielberg shot it for me, we're the predator in many of the shots. It's the shark's view coming up to Chrissy in the beginning. It's the shark's view coming up to little Alex Kintner on the raft. I think him doing that and letting us kind of be the predator in some crazy way works. I don't think it had been done before to that degree, with the dun 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 and the camera's getting closer and closer, and we're the shark. We are the shark going through the water. He could have easily shot a wide angle and see the shark coming up to Alex, but he didn't do that. He used us to look through the shark's eyes. So that was mind blowing for me. But I just think it's man against beast, and in the end, man won.
I mean, I'm on record saying that I agree with a lot of what you said as far as the adventure portion. I think it's a film of two halves. The first half, to me, I really have a hard time seeing it in a non post COVID lens, because that's when I saw the film for the first time. And so it's a lot about public health versus commercialism. But the second half, to me, the score changes. It's more soaring. There's more flute, kind of woodwind-esque instruments in the second half. It's more flighty. You're on the boat, and it feels in a sense a precursor to kind of like Raiders of the Lost Ark in how he shoots it, as the boat is more like a horse. You're riding it, but you're going into the unknown. And so it's got this element of things on the horizon type of stuff, all combined with somewhat of a happy accident in the whole Hitchcock, we have to hide the shark because it looks terrible every time it comes out of the water nature of the film.
Yeah, it wasn't working is the main reason why we didn't see it, besides it not looking good. It just wasn't working. But
Yeah.
that worked to Spielberg's benefit, of course. Us not seeing the shark until he actually pops up in the estuary and attacks the one guy and bites his leg off. That's when we really see it kind of come up.
Yeah. I agree with everything you've both said so far. I think that first and foremost, this movie is actually about combating weaponized incompetence. This might be way too deep and philosophical for what they intended with the story, but I think that we see ourselves as the shark because then man are the problem in the beginning. Yes, there's a shark in the water, but guess what? They've closed down campgrounds because there's a bear. They've closed down campgrounds because there's a moose with a baby. You just close it down because it's just not safe. That's nature, right? Okay, there's a shark in the water. But what was the big problem? They kept letting people in the water without controlling the situation because they were about the consumerism. They were focused on that. They were focused on the earnings of the community instead of the safety of the community. And I think that that's why it's shown as from an audience perspective of it's the people that are the bad guy, until then we have that second act that is, okay, now we're taking care of this. We're going to get this taken care of. We've been given the go ahead by the stinkers in town, and we're going to go ahead and take care of the situation. But I do think number one, it creates a really eerie, I want to say, just there's the eerie anticipation of, we don't know what this massive shark looks like. We just know it's big enough to tear people apart, not just take a bite out of them. But then, I'm mostly frustrated and scared of the people. And I'm disturbed by the mayor. I'm disturbed by these people who are getting upset. And then this woman comes up and slaps the crap out of the sheriff and is like, you knew. That's the scariest part to me, is that it's they knew what to do and they didn't. And then they know how to handle the shark. But to me, that's if I had to summarize what this movie is about in 3 words, it is combating weaponized incompetence.
I like it.
This could be one of 5 different things. Number 1, nature versus civilization. This is the raw, untamed force of nature, the shark. Whether you use the term shark in this, or a tornado, or the perfect storm, or whatever natural force that is in existence versus the attempt for humans to organize a viable, orderly, safe system. Whether you can use, and pull out your bingo cards, friends, Thomas Hobbes' world being nasty, brutish, and short. I knew I'd get that reaction from Tom. Versus where
You're
things
on
are.
my corner.
Then we're talking about the absurd versus the existentialism, which is Brody's struggle to find meaning in his life, and he's now facing this challenge of something that's beyond his control, and he has to finally reach the courage to overcome that. Then third, you have fear versus and the
Only
unknown.
3?
Oh, I have 5. The shark is never really seen. The fear generates. We're talking about that, the physical versus that. It's I mean, we could talk about Freud and Jungism and etc. And so we could do that. Capitalism versus the moral compromise, which is the town's decision to keep the beaches open despite the danger because of the fear of what would happen to them economically, and their willingness to overcome that in order to ensure their economic survival. And then finally, the heroism and the human condition. Brody is the everyman, Hooper the scientist, the intellectual, the rational, the knowledge, and Quint the survivor, the driven one, the person living to move forward to revenge his story. And together they come apart or come on behalf of humanity to overcome natural conditions. End of scene.
5 great choices.
Yes.
Thanks, Dad.
Which one do you agree with the most, though? Like, if you had to pick one of those.
I agree with whichever one was the shortest so that I can edit less on a holiday weekend.
See, this is what happens. I spent a little time prepping, and he doesn't like it. I ultimately think it's an issue of nature versus civilization. It's the fact that it's the first one, which is that, humans try to make rational, organized decisions, and they're constantly buffered and beaten back by events and situations that are beyond their control. All you have to do is tune into the Weather Channel and watch interviews that are done every time a tornado goes through someplace. And you'll realize that no matter what we do, we're never going to be able to overcome nature.
Yeah, I like that.
So, some further background on the movie. Jaws was released on June 20th, 1975. Adapted from Peter Benchley's best-selling novel on a rough budget of $9 million, Jaws would become a worldwide sensation and soar to the top of the box office with a record $123.1 million, becoming not only the highest-grossing film of 1975, but of all time as well. It has since gone on to gross $477 million in gross receipts over its lifetime. Jaws is number 7 on the inflation-adjusted lifetime grossing films of all time, and is only one of the 11 films that achieved the status as highest-grossing movie of all time. Can you name the others? Anyone?
Ooh, repeat that question.
There are 11 films that can claim the record of being the highest-grossing film of all time. Jaws is one of them. Can you name any of the other 10?
Probably.
Yeah, Titanic.
Avatar,
Titanic is one.
Yeah.
Avatar is
Avatar.
2. Yep.
Godfather.
The Godfather is 1.
Is it really?
Yes.
Interesting. E.T. maybe one of those, or Star Wars.
E.T. and Star Wars. So you've gotten quite a few in there. So the entire list is, first off, we have The Birth of a Nation from 1915, which held the record until 1939 with Gone with the Wind, which held the record then until Sound of Music in 1965. Then Gone with the Wind re-usurped it temporarily. And then we got The Godfather. Then we had Jaws, Star Wars, E.T., Jurassic Park, Titanic, and finally Avatar. Before we got to Avengers Endgame, and then Avatar resurpassed it. So currently Avatar is the highest grossing film of all time at the moment.
Wow. I didn't know that
Good
they
stuff.
tracked it all the way back to Birth of a Nation.
Yep.
I haven't seen that one, but I don't know if I'm a fan of D.W. Griffith, so we'll see.
Let me just say, the only way I can enjoy D.W. Griffith is in like 5 or 10 minute chunks. I cannot sit through the entire film. So
Yeah.
when you watch Birth of a Nation, because it's on YouTube and you can just like save your place, just
Yeah.
watch it in 10-minute chunks and it'll take you about 3 weeks, but you'll get through it. That's how I did.
Perfect. Perfect. I think I'd rather watch Intolerance than Birth of a Nation, but if it's
They're
there,
about the same.
It's about like being in a burn unit.
Wow.
Awesome.
All right. Jaws is also credited as creating the Hollywood summer blockbuster. It received mostly positive reviews at the time and was nominated for 4 Oscars, including Best Picture, and winning 3 for original score, film editing, and sound. The film had broader cultural repercussions as well, similar to the way the pivotal scene in 1960's Psycho made showers a new source of anxiety. Jaws led many viewers to fear going into the ocean. Some even questioned whether sharks could be in Lake Michigan. Reduced beach attendance in 1975 was attributed to it, as well as more reported shark sightings. It is still seen as responsible for perpetuating negative stereotypes about sharks and their behavior, and for producing the so-called Jaws effect, which allegedly inspired legions of fishermen who piled into boats and killed thousands of the ocean predators in shark fishing tournaments. Benchley would later campaign to stop the depopulation of sharks, saying that, quote, Jaws was entirely a fiction. In the years since Jaws' release, it has frequently been cited by film critics and industry professionals as one of the greatest movies of all time, which is why we're here. It was number 48 on AFI's 100 Years, 100 Movies in 1998. It dropped to number 56 on the 10th anniversary list. AFI also ranked The Shark at number 18 on its list of the 50 best villains of all time. Roy Scheider's line, You're Going to Need a Bigger Boat, at number 35 on a list of the top 100 movie quotes. Williams' score at 6th on a list of the 100 years of film scores, and the film as 2nd on a list of 100 most thrilling films, behind only Psycho. In 2003, the New York Times included the film on its list of the best 1,000 movies ever made. The following year, Jaws placed at the top of the Bravo Network's 5-hour miniseries, The 100 Scariest Movie Moments. The Chicago Film Critics Association named it as the 6th scariest film ever made in 2006. In 2008, Jaws was ranked the 5th greatest film in history by Empire magazine, which also placed Quint at number 50 on its list of the 100 greatest movie characters of all time. The film has been cited in many other lists of 50 and 100 greatest films, including ones compiled by Leonard Maltin, Entertainment Weekly, Film 4, Rolling Stone, Total Film, TV Guide, Vanity Fair, and Variety. In 2006, its screenplay was ranked 63rd best of all time by the Writers Guild of America. In 2012, the Motion Picture Editors Guild listed the film as the 8th best edited film of all time based on a survey of its membership. In 2001, the United States Library of Congress selected it for preservation in the National Film Registry, recognizing it as a landmark horror film and the first summer movie. Jaws currently holds a 97% among critics on Rotten Tomatoes, an 87 score on Metacritic, and a 3.9 out of 5 on Letterboxd. So I will also throw out this question. Is this movie better characterized as a series of happy accidents or the work of geniuses at the top of their craft?
I think it's a combination of both. I think there were so many mishaps on the set with the shark not working or the weather not, being where it needed to be. Boats in the background, they had to wait for boats to move out of that. There was just so many things that happened, but there's a lot of Steven Spielberg genius in there too. A lot of it. So I think it's not one or the other. I think for me it's a combination of both.
He would be also the first one to give credit to multiple other people working on this being at a high level at the same time. He gives credit to Robert Shaw for coming back and redoing the Indianapolis monologue. I think he said that in a recent remembrance of Jaws that I saw online or on social media. He will give credit to John Williams for fighting him through not understanding the Jaws score at first. He will give credit to the editor for how much she went about and created more of this film, because he would have left in more parts with the shark actually being seen. And he said every time it came to the film, she was right, I was wrong. So it's not just him. There's a lot of him in here. Definitely in his film appreciation and the things that the elements he's bringing in, but there's also a lot of other people that went into this to make it all a series of things crossing against each other.
Definitely. And I think him deciding to change some major points that were in the book and not put them in the movie, like, Hooper having an affair with Brody's wife, I just don't think that would have worked in this movie. Or the way the shark dies at the end is totally different than the book. He made a more cinematic ending. So, he made some good choices there for sure.
So, Dad, do you have some more background for us? Do you have a plot summary ready?
I do. Jaws is a masterclass in cinematic suspense, a film that grips the audience with primal fear and refuses to let go. Directed with surgical precision by a young Steven Spielberg, it tells the story of a seaside town terrorized by a great white shark, an unseen menace that lurks beneath the surface, both literally and metaphorically. Roy Scheider's Chief Brody, caught between political pressure and his own conscience, anchors the human drama, while Richard Dreyfuss and Robert Shaw provide texture as scientist and grizzled fisherman, respectively. But the real triumph of Jaws is its restraint. The mechanical shark's frequent malfunctions forced Spielberg to show less, and in doing so, he created more tension, more imagination, more terror. John Williams' iconic score doesn't just accompany the action, it is the shark. What emerges is not just a thriller, but a work of art that understands the mechanics of fear and the anatomy of heroism. It's not just about a shark, it's about the people who must confront it, and by extension, themselves.
Thank you, Dad. All right, did you know 3 mechanical Bruces were made, each with a specialized function? One shark was open on the right side, one was open on the left side, and the third was fully skinned. Each shark cost approximately $250,000.
Did you know there was 2 sets of teeth in the shark? One was a soft version, so when it bit down on the stuntman, it wouldn't hurt him. That was on the full shark. Yep.
All right. Did you know an accident during filming caused the Orca to begin sinking? Director Steven Spielberg began screaming over a bullhorn for the nearby safety boats to rescue the actors. John R. Carter, already up to his knees in water on the sinking Orca, held his Nagra tape recorder up over his head and screamed, "Fuck the actors, save the sound department." During the accident, the film camera was submerged, so its film, still submerged in seawater, was assumed to be ruined. However, once it was realized that developing solution is saline, the film was flown to a New York film lab and technicians didn't lose any of it. The accident is described starting at the 1 hour and 30-minute mark and 7 seconds in the Making of Jaws on the 30th anniversary special DVD. Did you know Director Steven Spielberg's biggest fear, other than the performance of the mechanical shark, was that cameras would catch sight of land? The reason Spielberg did not want land to be seen was because he thought the audience could envision the characters having the option of just running back to shore when in danger. He wanted to isolate the audience as much as the characters. I definitely think that kind of comes through. It's much different when you get to the ending and he and Dreyfuss have to kick back to shore. And it doesn't feel like it's too far, but it's also not close.
Yeah.
Right. You can see land in some of the shots even before he kills the shark. They're not far from land at that point. It looks like maybe a mile out or something.
Yeah. Did you know Quint's boat is named Orca? Being a shark hunter by profession, Quint knows that orcas, traditionally known as whale killers, are the only known predator of the great white shark. Didn't understand that it had that level of synergy.
Yeah, I didn't either.
All right, and finally,
can I add a did you know in there really quick?
Yeah.
Did you know that the famous line, "You're going to need a bigger boat," was not in the script and totally ad-libbed by Roy Scheider? You probably read that, but that's a true fact.
Yes.
So
I think they also had to record it a couple of times.
Yes.
The final version might be dubbed because it couldn't be heard.
You might be right.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. Finally, did you know Director Steven Spielberg observed at the first test screening that the surprise first appearance of the shark got the biggest scream from the audience. However, after he reshot the scene at Ben Gardner's boat, the surprise appearance of Ben Gardner's head got the biggest scream, while the appearance of the shark received half the reaction it used to. Spielberg said it taught him a lesson, that a movie can only have one major scare moment, because afterward, the audience will be on guard against the film.
I really like that. I think like he's right, but I just didn't think about, like, as an audience member, I don't think about that because I'm not analyzing reactions as an audience member the first time. I'm just experiencing it. So that's really, really cool, really helpful for this genre in general. So that's awesome.
I'm sure he has more nuggets than we could possibly ever fathom.
Yeah.
But yeah, incredibly astute. So that looks like a good spot for our first break. We will be right back to revisit the Stanley Rubric. Stay tuned. Before we jump back into the episode, and before we get to the Stanley Rubric in a minute, next week for our 270th episode, we welcome back Walter Gaynor of the Working Well Black Show to discuss another Best Picture nominee from 2010 with Inception, celebrating its 15th anniversary. Written and directed by Christopher Nolan, cinematography by Wally Pfister, music by Hans Zimmer, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Ken Watanabe, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Marion Cotillard, Elliot Page, Tom Hardy, Cillian Murphy, Tom Berenger, and Michael Caine. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. All right, before we get to the Stanley Rubric as well, I'd just like to quickly check in with both of our guests this evening. Ralph, what's going on with you? What are you working on, and where can people find you?
I have a couple of different projects going on. Like I mentioned earlier, just optioned a new book that we're trying to turn into a movie. And I have another project that we have a full script written, and we're pitching that now. And then have a series that we're trying to pitch to some TV producers. So it's a lot going on actually right now. I'm just waiting for one of them to click, and I'm pretty sure one will. But yeah, there's just a lot going on. There's a lot on the slate, as they say out here in the industry. But good things are happening for sure. And you can find me on Instagram. You can look me up on IMDb. I'm on there as well. You can see what I'm working on. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And I'm holding my Jaws vinyl here to show everybody.
Very cool.
Boy.
This book is called the Jaws Log. I've had this since I was probably 12 or 13. This was written by Carl Gottlieb, who, was involved with Jaws. I think pages are falling out now, but this really dives into the film behind the scenes. Good stuff.
Adding to my Amazon cart.
Yeah, I think it's a different cover now, but it's still out there.
Love it.
It's a great book.
So fun.
And to you, Klarissa, what are you working on, and where can people find you?
Yes, well, I've seen that one on Instagram. If you've seen my experience or anything like that, I've been going through all these classics that I've never seen. I grew up with some, but not with others. So I've been chipping away at that list, but I have a journal that I'll be publishing, kind of like a book journal side, at the end of July. And I'll be posting that or publishing it to Amazon. And then I'm also starting my own podcast called I've Seen That One in August. So very, very excited.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's going to be fun.
Well, as I offer all of our Cinepodcaster friends, if you need any assistance, advice, or anything else, I'm always glad to try and help. The editing is always something that I think I'm particularly well placed to do, better than some, although you probably are fine on your own with most of the other stuff.
I really will be needing your help, especially with the podcast. I'm very intimidated by that, so thank you so much.
It's quite all right. I'm glad to help any of our newbies as they get started on their journey as well. So very exciting, very exciting. But we'll get back to the shark of the hour, and that'd be Jaws for this evening. We have twice visited Jaws, and I don't know if we're going to probably ever revisit it again unless there really is a need. I feel that based on our last score, and I will say one of my favorite episodes in the history of the show was our revisit of Jaws in season 2. But we'll see now, adding in 2 new guests, what we have for final scores on this. We will start with Legacy, which is a category where we split usually between the audience and the industry as to the legacy of the film approximately 5 years after it came out. So since this is now celebrating its 50th anniversary, that would be the last 45 years, 1980 to today. What is the legacy of this movie? I think I can maybe make this very quick. Original legacy on this one in our very first episode going back to season 1 was a 10. Our revisit legacy score was also a 10. And forgive me, I think I'm also saying that I think this was correct. A 10 was warranted. This should be a 10 for legacy. Does anyone have any disagreements with that statement?
No.
Not at all.
Not
Okay.
on my end.
Anything really to discuss there? I mean, I don't want to shortchange the audience at home, but it feels like it would be futile to try and argue against a 10 here.
No, you hit it right on the head. I mean, Quentin Tarantino was on a talk show, I forgot when recently, and they asked him what his favorite movie is, or what's the perfect movie, and he said Jaws. I mean, knowing everything that went on behind the scenes and seeing the finished product and how it ended up, I mean, you have to give it a 10. I'm getting goosebumps just saying that right now. It's just a freaking phenomenal movie.
If you ever are in a situation where you say one word, and 90% of everyone will immediately know what you're talking about, then that's a 10 legacy. If you just go up to somebody and say Jaws, I will guarantee about 90% of people will immediately think of the movie.
If you play the 2 notes,
yes,
people know exactly what it's from. It's the greatest single 2 notes in cinema history.
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah, this was an easy category to score as far as that goes, and I have a feeling that our next category will likely be the same. For impact and significance, which is usually defined by the initial 5 years that we just discounted, what is the impact and significance for the film at the time that it was made until roughly 5 years after, so 1975 to 1980, and how does that impact both the industry and the audience at large? Originally, we had a 9.75 in our first episode. We revisited that and gave it a full 10. I, again, would have a very difficult time, given the nature of what it did to the film industry, promoting 2 of the greatest collaborators of all time in John Williams and Steven Spielberg, say it's anything less than a 10. Again, any disagreement?
Not for me.
No. As I indicated when I was talking about the film earlier, this was a cultural phenomenon. There's only one other cultural phenomenon during that period of time within that 5-year period that was anywhere near. Well, there was 2 actually. One was the streaking, and the other was the rise of CB radios. Those 2 things were all about the same time, but both of those even paled in comparison to Jaws and the fear associated with sharks.
And let's not forget, as you stated earlier, it was literally the first summer blockbuster,
Yeah.
And originally it was supposed to be released by, Christmas the year before, and they had to push it to summer, and my God, how did that work out, right? Perfect timing.
Totally.
Well, I mean, summer films were Elvis, Annette and Frankie.
Yeah.
Those were summer films that you could go to at the drive-in. And so that's what summer was.
Okay, so we have a 10 in both of our first 2 categories with very little negotiation going on. Now the rest of the podcast probably starts. We go to Novelty. Now, this is a little bit more nuanced than the first 2 times that we visited Novelty. As of this season, you will note that we have started to split this category 5 and 5 points, like we do for impact and significance and for legacy. But this time we split it between the originality of anything having to do with the movie. So this could be cinematography, storytelling, score, anything having to do with the movie. Or the other 5 points is reserved for execution on the movie. Now, I have a feeling none of us is really going to discount the execution side of Novelty on this one. So that's likely to be a 5. So if there's any argument on this, it's going to be on the originality of Jaws as a concept for one thing or another. I guess my only argument to say is that we had a 9 in our original scoring. We had a 9.58 in our revisited scoring, and I currently have a 9.5. I don't think this is the most audacious film of all time. I don't think it's necessarily leaps and bounds ahead of it, but as Dad was saying, it's combining some old things. I know we were on a Movies and Us podcast a couple of weeks ago, and I talked about Spielberg bringing back the narrowed focus or the dolly zoom that had really only been used prior in Vertigo, and then repopularizing it. We talk about John Williams' score. We talk about some of the other impending doom nature of how this movie went about and what it went on to beget for other films of the time. I think it is audacious. I just don't think it's to a full 5. So I have a 9.5 here. And I am willing to listen to other arguments.
I have to agree with you on this one. As much as it hurts me, I want to give it a full 10. There's a lot of Hitchcock in this, for sure. So originality, it's been done before. The whole Dolly thing, Hitchcock, you mentioned. There's just a lot of, if you would have told me as a kid, oh, Alfred Hitchcock directed this, I probably would have believed you as a 10-year-old kid, So, yeah, I'm right with you on that score for sure. And Hitchcock was, big influence on Spielberg, of course.
Yeah. Well, one thing I love that you mentioned Hitchcock, because every time I watch this movie, I am always in the mood to watch The Birds. Every single time.
I love The Birds, right?
So do I. So do I. It is coastal. It is nature out of control, unexplainably, like just kind of there. And of course, there's more. Why are the birds doing this? Birds don't typically do this, where sharks, like, we know that they're predators, they're an apex predator. But I do think that there are those tropes, and I kind of talked about like the formula before. I think that this is a formula movie where it kind of sets up that formula of, someone's not believed, but we have seen that before, right? So it does have some of those original tropes. I gave it a 9.5 as well, for that exact same reason. When I was thinking about that, just for that reason, where it beautifully nods, like gives a nod to these classics while still having originality, but it does still have a nod. So yeah, 9.5 I think is the perfect score to still give it that credit and respect what it's done for the industry, what it's done for movies, things like that, while also acknowledging where those things came from.
So, Dad, we have 3 9.5s on the board. You going to let us down?
No. 9.5.
Yeah.
The parallels between this and Moby Dick. I mean, to the fact that Quint is obsessed with destroying the shark because it's vengeance against the Indianapolis. It's Moby Dick. The fact that the film had been done, I think, about 15 years before with Gregory Peck?
What film?
Moby Dick.
Oh, okay. You lost me there for a second.
Yeah. So, and then not to mention, as Klarissa mentioned, The Birds, which also draws on the fact of society and the unexplained circumstances of nature. So I'm at a 9.5 also.
All right. Well, we make the math really easy on these
18.
revisits. We have not had to really negotiate at all yet, so this has not been much of a fight. But stay tuned. Right now, we're going to go for our second commercial break. We'll be right back, and we'll see if we can bring you some more debate when it comes to classicness. Before we jump back into the episode, and before we get back to the Stanley Rubric in a minute, if you're ever curious about our Master Greatest Movies of All Time list that has every graded movie we've ever discussed on the show, there's a link in the episode description of every episode of this show, or you can go to RonnieDuncanStudios.com and find it as the top entry on the Greatest Movie of All Time podcast show page. That is the grades we've done so far for all 242 movies that we've graded, and we continue to add more each week. Make sure to check that out as we go and follow along. All right, we left off at Classicness. The original score for our first episode going back to season 1 was an 8.25. We revisited the classicness of this for a 9.5 in season 2. Dad, this is usually your most nuanced category, and this category is usually defined by how well something ages or not. So what say you? How well has Jaws aged?
I actually went up from our 9.5 to a 10. At a time where we are yet again willing to sacrifice the well-being or health of an entire group of Americans for the benefit of the wealthiest and most economic privileged in this country, we are doing it yet again. And so this just lays out how hypocritical our world is and how hypocritical our society and country is, that we're willing to allow people to die for our own economic advantage or the economic advantage of a few.
Absolutely perfect. No real notes. I also have a 10. It's really hard for me to say that a movie that has not resonated with the public for clearly over 50 years, that's still enjoyed by all ages today, and is one of the few movies that seems to not age, by one of our great, probably the greatest living director, is not a 10. So I'm good.
I'm at a 10 as well, for sure. I mean, this 50-year anniversary we've been having the past month has just been amazing. It's gotten so much more publicity, and they had some big events back east where it was shot. It's just been a nice 50-year anniversary. I'm really happy to see that.
Yeah.
You don't see that for most films.
No, you don't. You really don't. And
Yeah.
I think too, like you were saying, it's being celebrated so largely again for this anniversary for a reason. I absolutely think it will be the same thing when this movie turns 100. And if not,
Yeah.
I will be so upset. Our world will have crumbled if they aren't celebrating movies the way that they should. But I personally think like this is them giving this movie the credit that it deserves. That shows its timelessness. I think going back to what Dana was saying earlier about how you wouldn't really even be able to tell too much that this movie was made at this time because everyone's in swimsuits and all these things, and the themes are so similar. They weren't even the language and things like that. Of course, I think the one time that I think you could really tell it was the 70s is the girl who points out the shark in the pond. She's wearing a bandana. And I like nowadays girls still wear bandanas. They've kind of brought them back, but I was like, that is the most 70s outfit I will see at all in this movie. Like everything else I feel I'm like, this just looks normal. This is, I think that it genuinely holds up. And it is such a timeless theme with everything we talked about. All of these themes, they have kind of just related similarly all through time. Like, we do underestimate weather. And I mean, even now I live in Utah and we're in a drought again, but we're, people are moving here like crazy and we're not accommodating to our natural resources, or we're underestimating nature and things like that. Like that happens. It's a tale as old as time. And so I think, and seeing what a freaking weenie of a mayor. It's like, we know weenies. We all see it. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where these things that happen in the movie, it's like, this is relatable. And that's what makes it so classic, is that it's like, people are going to make connections to this forever, I feel like.
But the mayor's wearing he's wearing a cool sport coat with little anchors on it. You got to love that.
You know what? It doesn't mean he doesn't have style. From all that money, right? All the money from the beaches.
Well, even that's not 70s because it's technically a seersucker, which is
true.
A summer suit. So, yeah.
Such great casting. Murray Hamilton as the mayor was just, everybody was phenomenal. They used so many locals. They used half that room of city council were just locals who lived on the island. I mean, it just was, it was just perfect. I mean, everybody just kind of clicked, and you didn't know who was a local or who was an actor. Everybody meshed so well. So,
Yeah.
but the casting was just phenomenal. And if you knew who they were going to cast for Brody and Quint and all that, you would be like, what? So you can all dive into that on Google or something. But yeah, casting is amazing.
I think that it's aided a little bit by the casting as well, not casting like a mega star. Like if you had Gene Hackman as the mayor, for example, or I think it would have overshadowed the movie. Robert Shaw was a really good actor, but he was a nice character actor. Roy Scheider was in a lot of 70s movies, but he wasn't like a huge name that like after the fact. It's not like Harrison Ford
Right.
leading Jaws.
Yeah, Charlton Heston wanted that role and fought for it, but Spielberg was like, no, he just saved L.A. in an earthquake. He just saved an airplane, Airport 75, whatever that movie. And there's just no way the audience is going to believe Charlton Heston as Chief Brody.
Yeah.
So, Klarissa, I would assume you also have a 10.
Yes.
Okay.
10.
So that's rounding it out. We have moved from the 9.5 to a 10. So technically we are still down points. 0.03 points to be exact from our current score, but we have time to resurrect that yet with one more category, rewatchability. Now this is the one where I think we're going to have some varying opinions, okay? The original rewatchability score, going back to our first episode in season 1, was a 6. Our revisit rewatchability score was an 8.17. Now, I have to assume, Ralph, you have a 10.
Of course, 11 if I could. I mean, come on. I literally will, if it's on TV, if I'm channel surfing and I see it, I will stop and watch it. Even if Dodger game's on, I don't care. I'll watch Jaws. It takes me back to a happy time, not that I'm not happy now, but it takes me back to my childhood and it gives me that good feeling that I had watching it in the theater. I'll watch it all the time. I don't want you guys to think I'm like some Jaws, like psycho, like crazy fan.
Do you want to hold up your mug again?
Yeah, I know. Shoot, as I say that, there you go.
It's the best, though. I just had to poke fun at that.
On my screensaver on my phone. It's just no. I just love it. I love movies. I mean, even during the day when I'm working, I'm playing film scores in the background. That's all I listen to. I just love film, so it's part of me.
Yeah.
Yeah, 10 for sure.
It's certainly okay to share passions. That's what this show is about. That's what most of these movie podcasts are about, is sharing something that we love with others. And I think nobody here is going to fault you for loving this particular movie. Many people do.
Awesome. I won't stand up and show you my Jaws boxers that I'm wearing. I'm kidding.
But I respect it.
That's a joke.
That's a joke. I have a response to that, but I won't give it.
He definitely has an inelastic opinion on this one.
I'm gonna say I am also a 10, and I don't have it as my wallpaper, but I have to say, like, movies have touched me very similarly. I own 14 movies on iTunes. I have 14 movies that I'm like, no matter what, I don't want to rely on a streaming service to have this, to watch it wherever. I need to have it. Jaws is one of those movies. And
nice.
I just think this is one, and I'm kind of looking even at our Stanley rubric, and would I leave it on? Would I put it on? Both, yes. I was ecstatic. I've already watched this movie 3 times in 2025. This is a movie that I just feel like is so easy to put on and enjoy. I know it's a thriller, horror, adventure, but it's one of those movies that it doesn't matter where you are. It's great always. It is great always. And you can be into it. You don't even need to be like, I'll put it on while I'm doing my data analysis at work, and I'll just glance over and I really enjoy it, or the dialogue, and it's just so good. I personally feel like, and that's maybe also me, I am a rewatcher, but I would rewatch this movie, and I will rewatch it multiple times before 2026. So the numbers are just rake it up.
And really quick, how can you not, towards the end of the film, when the shark is swimming towards Brody and he's perched up on that mast, how can you not just get so freaking excited with the music kicked in,
Yeah.
the cuts, the edits, the camera gets closer and closer to Brody. It's just, seeing it in a theater with a bunch of, people back in the day, it was such a communal experience. Everybody just cheered, and
Yeah.
I remember people were standing up clapping back in the 70s when he blew up the shark. That's how crazy it was. You don't see people
Yeah.
really standing up doing that these days. Maybe, I don't know, but it was just a different
Rarely.
time.
Maybe.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a different time. The editing, music, everything just at that point, just it all built up to that moment. Smile, you son of a done, so.
Yeah. So good.
All right, Dad. Now, all of us know what the audience score is going to be. I will just say that in order to place this back at number 1, we need to average for this category a 9.28. We have 2 10s on the board, and we average this category. So would you like to go last and be like Empire and see if you surprise everybody and see what happens? Or would you like me to go last and see if I give the suspenseful take on it?
Go ahead. I'm the sage of the show.
All right. Well, I'm going to be the person, unfortunately, that probably ruins a little bit of the average here. I have taken the tact this season of going to more of an objective score. It's going to be very rare to find the film based on an objective finding that almost universally everybody loves. Just person to person to person to person to person that has no issue with the film, that has like universal praise, that likes to rewatch it multiple times. I still think that despite some of the things that it would have going for it, that I think a lot of people think of this as a horror film, that it's got certain elements of being an older film, it is still appealing. And so by that stretch, I can't go to a full 10, but I have objectively on this one a 9. So right now we'd still be holding the average to put this back at number 1. But Dad, that means that right now it is at a 9.67. So unless you basically have an 8.5, this will go back to number 1.
Let me put it this way. I have a list of films that are in my head that on any given day, if I'm having a bad day, if I'm tired, if we can't agree on anything else to watch, I'm going to put one of these films on TV and watch it. Among those, Dial M for Murder, North by Northwest, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, The Best Years of Our Lives, Rio Bravo, Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, Caddyshack. Okay.
I'm still not hearing 12 Angry Men.
12 Angry Men.
Okay, there you go.
Good.
Okay. So if I have not given those a 10 on rewatchability, on a revisit I will, because I've rethought this. Now the question is Jaws in that category? When we first saw this, I would say no. I would probably have been more inclined to the 7, 6, 7, whatever, because I did not think I really had an appreciation for the film that I do now, having watched so many classics and really thought about it. Now the question is this a 9.5 or is this a 10?
Well, either way, it goes back to number 1, but okay.
Either way. I guess I would have to say this is in that sphere of, yes, I'm going to probably rewatch this film once a year. It'll be on the rotation. If nothing else, just Robert Shaw's performance and Spielberg's execution are just, to me, above and beyond cinematic glory. I mean, and I forgot to mention the Shawshank Redemption in that category as well. So I'm going to give it a 10 because I think that's in that category of films that just ultimately satisfy my hunger for good cinema.
Well said.
All right, that moves us from an 8.17 to a 9.75. For audience score on this one, originally in the first episode, we had a 9. For the revisit, when we added in the Rotten Tomatoes score, we had an 8.9. At the time, it was 88% for Google users and a 90% for Rotten Tomato users. Unfortunately, I don't know what the hell happened on Google, but it dropped to 83% approval on Google. So we had to subtract a few minor decimal points here, and it drops from an 8.9 to an 8.65. So to repeat the categories here, we had a 10 for legacy, a 10 for impact and significance, a 9.5 for novelty, a 10 for classicness, a 9.75 for rewatchability, and an 8.65 for audience score. This on the first time around was a 52, which would be good for tied for number 30 or 31 currently. Currently, after the revisit, we had it at a 56.15, good for number 3 on our current list. After this revisit, we now have a total score of 57.9, and currently placing it, you guessed it, at number 1, almost a full half point above The Empire Strikes Back.
Whoo! Nice.
I really think that it's most interesting having this as the number 1 film of all time. I think it is probably the most universally difficult film to criticize as the number 1 while still being unique to itself. I mean, I know a lot of people have Citizen Kane and The Godfather and these other ones. We've revisited a lot of these. And we will definitely revisit Citizen Kane because for whatever reason, my dad had a lower score than I do, who is very critical of Citizen Kane. But I think that having Jaws as our number 1 greatest movie of all time brings me a certain satisfaction that you just cannot get from the current Sight and Sound poll that has Jean Dielman as its number 1 film of all time.
Yeah.
So, I had predicted earlier in the year that Empire would get to number 1 and then Jaws would surpass it. Funny how that works on my own show. But thank you both for being here for yet another crowning of a number 1 movie of all time, even if it is recrowning a movie that I think holds the record for most time at number 1 on our show. Unfortunately, we have to turn to a slightly dour note, and we will be doing our in memoriam here. Dad, do we have anyone to remember this week?
We have a rather long list. Rick Hurst, 79, American actor, known for roles on The Dukes of Hazzard, in the movie Steel Magnolias and Earth Girls Are Easy. Bill Moyers, 91, American journalist and political commentator, wrote the Bill Moyers Journal, was White House press secretary from 1965 to 1967. Lalo Schifrin, 93, Argentine-born American film and television composer, wrote scores for Mission Impossible, Dirty Harry, Rush Hour, 5-time Grammy winner. Bobby Sherman, American singer, performed the songs Little Woman. Julie, Do You Love Me? Actor, known for roles in Here Comes the Brides, The FBI. Rebecca Del Rio, 57, American singer and actress, performed in Mulholland Drive. Joe Marinelli, 68, American actor, known for roles in Santa Barbara, The Morning Show, General Hospital, and Sideways. Jack Betts, 96, American character actor, known for roles in Spider-Man, One Life to Live, Gods and Monsters. Lynn Hamilton, 95, American actress, known for roles in Sanford and Son, Roots, The Next Generation, The Waltons. Gaylord Sartain, 78, American actor, known for roles in The Buddy Holly Story, Mississippi Burning, and Hee Haw.
And so we remember these all here fondly with a moment of silence in their honor. Thank you. Okay. I don't have any remaining questions for this one. I think Jaws has been picked over enough. If you want any of the remaining questions or general fandom things that are out there in the ether, I'm sure you can find anything and everything. I think there's a great new documentary that's either coming out or has come out recently on the making of the film that presents it more from like a Spielberg perspective, that I think it was supposed to be on either cable TV or network TV, something like that here.
National Geographic. National Geographic did a doc. Yeah, I think it's on next week, maybe 6th or 7th or something. Yeah. I wanted to say really quick, I love that you guys do the in memoriam. Can't even say it. I think it's awesome you do that. You know, we lose talent every year, and people just forget about, these actors and actresses, and that you guys even mention their names and what they've done, some of their credits. I think it's really cool. So, just hats off on that.
Thank you.
It was a thing that we started years ago because I wanted to give Dad a little bit more to do on the show. That was his thing. And he always loves this section of the Oscars. So we've expanded slowly over time, then in just not completely celebrating the big names. Like, it's easy to have in memoriam when it's Gene Hackman recently, or it's Jimmy Caan, or, any of the insert big name here. David Lynch also recently comes to mind. And we're definitely going to be losing a lot of these new Hollywood era people. We've talked about it a bunch on the show, whether it's the musicians from the 70s or 80s, or the actors, directors, other people that are going to be contributing to these, the people that my dad grew up with. But it's mentioning all of the other people that you didn't know you had a relationship to. The art director from Star Wars, the cinematographer from the On Golden Pond and Gandhi, people like that just, you're like, oh, I didn't even know they were necessarily here, but here's their biography. And for anybody that, I know that not everybody tunes into our personal page on the website and such, and I'll promote it here shamelessly, RonnieDuncanStudios.com, but each individual episode of the show has an individual page, and we link all of the obituaries, biographies for every person that's on the list in there, that you can click on, find any of their information if you're just curious about their life or what they did and how their work was done. But yeah, that was something that Dad wanted to do, and I think we've appreciated finding out more and more about these people as well.
Love it. Yeah. That's awesome.
So, with that, we have yet again another, well, it's not a new movie, but another number one back in the rotation.
We want to have a remaining question, by the way.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, this is what I thought about. I'm a firm believer that many times the great innovations in life, the great advances in society, are by people who are young and stupid and don't know that they shouldn't be doing what they're doing.
Orson Welles.
Yeah, that they don't know what they're doing, so they do things unconventionally. And so I'm going to throw out some things here and just say, would you rather have novelty and energy, creativity versus experience and skill? So would you rather have Taxi Driver or Osage County? Would you rather have the 39 Steps or North by Northwest?
So first off, just hold on a second. Osage County was not a Scorsese film. I think you mean Killers of the Flower Moon.
Killers of the Flower Moon, I'm sorry. Splash versus A Beautiful Mind.
What is Ron Howard doing in this conversation all of a sudden?
Double Indemnity versus The Apartment. Memento versus Oppenheimer. I mean, we're talking about films that were raw and in early ages of some great directors versus films that are more as they've matured and have had multiple films under their belt. Do we appreciate the rawness and the newness and the unique aspect of something that they're doing where no one else had thought about going, versus the fact that they're now aged and more nuanced in what they're doing?
I think there's something that plays into that when you're young and new and have all that energy. Sometimes you don't have all that money either to put what you want on screen. So when you're Scorsese at doing Taxi Driver and you have $1 million budget and now you have 30 million for your whatever you did 2 years ago or whatever. I mean, there's just, I don't know. I think that plays with your creativity a lot of what you want to do and put on screen. So I don't know. That's kind of I'm on the fence on those.
Yeah.
But I get what you're saying.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, like Jaws and then, War Horse by Spielberg or War of the Worlds, but, it's just,
War
geez.
Horse.
War Horse. Yeah.
Yeah, War Horse is a good movie. Great score by John Williams.
It's a great movie and a great score.
It is. Why are you laughing?
I don't think I've talked about War Horse in a long time, but that is a really great movie.
Yeah.
I think for me, this is kind of bad, or maybe it's not bad, but maybe it's just less intentional. I go into a movie knowing that it has like a classic element to it. It's been talked about enough that I go into it and I watch it, and then it almost feels like I'm looking at the cast and the director secondary. I mean, I actually went into Thelma and Louise not knowing that Susan Sarandon was in that movie. I had no idea, which is crazy, but I just didn't. I just knew the name Thelma and Louise, and I pressed play. And so for me, there have been times where I'm experiencing movies that way. I commented on one of your reels one time, and I said, "Oh, Charade is a great Hitchcock." I didn't know that wasn't a Hitchcock. I actually didn't, and that was before I went on this huge Hitchcock kick. But there have been times where I'm like, okay, now I have seen this. I want to go and watch more from this specific director. And then I piece together things from directors. But I don't think I have ever comparatively gone through a director's career and analyzed films that way. It's just been more like I'm taking this film for what it is and appreciating this director for this movie. And going forward kind of like that. It's like and that would be a really interesting endeavor, I think, to take on of like, oh, I'm looking at, I think another great example of Hitchcock is I Confess and looking at, or even Stage Fright, and going forward from these and going to like Rear Window or Vertigo or things like that. But I've just never done that. So I guess I go back to, I would answer that same thing with like once they got that traction and that trust in the industry where they were able to build more opportunities, bigger named cast members. I mean, Strangers on a Train is one of my very favorite Hitchcocks, and I haven't seen those two lead men in too many other things. I've seen them in other things, but not too much. When later on we've worked into massive casts and big names from the golden era, like the golden age. But that was, I feel like that was kind of building for them. But it doesn't mean I don't appreciate the movie or think that it's less of a classic because of that. Does that make sense? That is so tangential, but and a little all over the place.
I guess I just really don't understand the question because everyone, save for where, like, based on my opinion, I think the Scorsese pulling out Taxi Driver, which I think is his best film, versus a film that I can respect, but I didn't necessarily like very much in Killers of the Flower Moon. Every other pairing that you pulled out, I'm like, great film versus great film. Okay, what's the question here? Great film versus great film. Great film versus great film. It's like, okay, most of these directors, if you're one of the Hall of Famers, the true masthead director people of all time, you probably have great films when you're young and when you're old. So I guess I don't understand where you're going.
Well, are the initial films when you're raw and don't know exactly what you're doing and you hit, are they, because of the fact that they're so fresh and new and you really didn't know what you were doing, better ultimately than when you have the director refining his skills and his experience later on and becoming a better overall filmmaker? Or
it depends on
it
depends on the director. For Spielberg, I think most people would say he was a better overall director in his earlier work because some people don't appreciate like the last 20 years of what he's done. But on the same token, he's, I think, the only director to be nominated for Best Director in 5 different decades. Maybe it's 6 by this point. So it's really hard to separate out like all of his great work from each other. By the same token, I think I appreciate more of the very early Scorsese, but he's still got Wolf of Wall Street, The Departed, which is one of my 3 favorite films, and those are all within the last 20 years. So
Raging Bull.
It's really hard to say. But for every one of those, like I think Wilder is better in his earlier years than in his later years, but for Hitchcock, I think he's better in his later years than his earlier years. So it's really tough for me to say. It's just kind of you take each one by itself, and I don't know if there's anything larger from a sociological point of view that I could extrapolate to say, I like this more here and I don't like this as much here.
Well, what I'm getting at is at least it's a point of discussion. Whether or not, some directors, just because they're so revolutionary as young men or women, do something that's so unique and refreshing that it changes the genre. Versus some
I get exactly what you're saying. You lose sometimes I think you lose that edge maybe when you've been doing it so long and you have all this money, big budget, big cast. You might lose that edge that you had when you were up and coming and young, and maybe did things a little differently. I get what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's more apparent in like musicians than it is necessarily filmmakers.
I'm just throwing it out as a consideration.
All right. We'll leave it to people smarter than I to try and debate that one then.
The travesty was Spielberg didn't get nominated for Best Director for Jaws. That's what blows my mind.
I think sometimes critics and this establishment don't realize what they're watching.
Yeah, you're right.
But it might have been from the same standpoint when Steven Spielberg took out Quentin Tarantino in 1994 and said, "It's not your time, kid."
Yeah.
We think of the Oscars as this award show that's meant to award the actual best film, and that's just the way they have it set it up is the way to fail at awarding the actual best stuff. It's an imperfect system, and that's why we love it, because we get to argue with it all the time.
Yeah. I agree. It was started to get people to keep working for really cheap. So, like, it's not like it was founded solely on, oh, this is the most talented stuff. It was, Louis B. Mayer literally said, I want them to keep making me money, so I'm going to drape a bunch of gold on them. Like that, almost verbatim, that's what he said. So it's like, well, take it or leave it.
That sounds very Napoleon-esque.
Yep.
It's kind of the whole philosophy of, instead of giving them more money, I just give them another title.
Yeah, literally. So, yeah.
But I would like to thank both of our guests for being here with us this evening. First up, Klarissa, you are not scheduled to be back with us until Thanksgiving for yet another revisit, this time in Psycho. But please tell the people what you're working on and where they can find you again.
Yes. I am working on a book and a podcast, and you can find me on Instagram at I've Seen That One.
Excellent. Ralph, you are scheduled to be back 1 week after Klarissa. You're going to be back with us in December for Michael Mann's Heat. But let people know what you're working on and where they can find you.
Love it. And really quick, if you ever do anything on Oliver Stone, please invite me in for that one. Huge Oliver Stone fan. So you can find me on Instagram, Ralph_Esparza, IMDb. You can see what I'm working on. It'll have all the projects and their status. And that's pretty much it. I don't do Facebook much, just pretty much Instagram and IMDb and LinkedIn. People do that. I do that too. So, but I'm excited for Heat for sure.
As am I, because I know my dad has yet to see it. So I'm very curious how he will come out on that one.
Well, that's going to be fun.
But yes, 2 of the all-time greats going head to head.
I saw that a few months ago at Tarantino's theater. It was an actual film print that he owns. He shows most of the things he shows. It's his personal print, and the sound system in his theater is amazing. So all I can say is it was a great experience to see it on the big screen again.
Awesome.
So, Dad, this would normally be time for final thoughts for the week, but we're running a little bit long, and it is a holiday weekend. So how about we just move it on to next week and save it for then?
That's fine. I'm in the middle of several things, so I will go from there.
All right. So that'll do it for us this week. Thank you for listening. You mustn't be afraid to dream a little bigger, darling. Next week, for our 270th episode, we welcome back Walter Gaynor of the Working While Black Show to discuss yet another Best Picture nominee from 2010 with Inception, celebrating its 15th anniversary. Written and directed by Christopher Nolan. Cinematography by Wally Pfister. Music by Hans Zimmer. Starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Ken Watanabe, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Marion Cotillard, Elliot Page, Tom Hardy, Cillian Murphy, Tom Berenger, and Michael Caine. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. Please like, follow, rate, and review, or whatever on whichever platform you have so that more can join in on our fun. You can also email the show at RonnieDuncanStudios.com or greatestalltimemoviepodcast@gmail.com, or find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, or TikTok at the handle @GMPodcast. The Greatest Movie of All Time is a production of Ronnie Duncan Studios. Our show's mixed, edited, and written by Thomas Duncan. Our music is thanks to Purple Planet Music. Our distributor is Captivate FM. Our technical provider is Riverside FM.